It's time to turn your life-challenging moments into life-changing messages. Welcome to the Power Lift Stories podcast, where we are interviewing women whose stories will leave you lifted up, fired up, and fueled up with hope, courage, and inspiration. We want to thank our sponsor, Powerful Journey, who helps women tell their stories, write their books, and building a profitable brand around both. Join the Masterclass or the Speakers Academy at phyllisjenkins.com. That is PhyllisJenkins.com. Now here's your host, Phyllis Jenkins.
What is your mission in life, and do you have a mission statement? Well, our next guest is definitely leaving an impact on the world. I am so excited today to introduce to some of you. She is no stranger to the Powerful Journey stage, and that is Tiffany, one of a kind Weaver. Tiffany, welcome.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here.
So happy to have you. And I mentioned the one of a kind, and you're wearing the shirt one of a kind. So I am going to ask you to just share with our listeners just quickly what the one of a kind stands for.
Well, one of a kind, it started out as me as a model, and then it turned into a mentor group, and now it's like a full-blown organization. But the whole meaning behind one of a kind is just to remind us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, created in God's likeness and his image. And because of that, each and every one of us is one of a kind. So I just take ownership of the name, and I'm one of a kind Tiffany, and have been rocking this name for about 15, 20 years.
That is great. That's great. Well, I mentioned to you that Tiffany has been on the Powerful Journey stage. She has gone through the Authors Academy as well as the Speakers Academy. So that makes her an author and a speaker, but she is so much more than that. Tiffany is a wife. She's a mother to two beautiful daughters. She is, an author and a writer from her heart, and her platform just continues to expand. So Tiffany, share a little bit more about you, and then we will get into your story.
Awesome. Well, as she noted, I started out on the speakers platform, and I'm now a published author. I'm an Army veteran. So when I got out of the Army, I started a mentor group for girls, and I've had that organization for about 15, 20 years. It's normally volunteer services, me coming out of my own pocket, helping girls, inspire them, equip them, community service events. I do etiquette classes. I just kind of pull them in and inspire and equip them with whatever they need. And so I've been working with some of these girls. The program is kind of small now because most of the girls have gone on and they're in college, but it's so wonderful to see the girls that I have, pouring into their lives and to see where they are now. I'm a healthcare administrator. I went to school and got my double master's I think after I wrote my book and stood on stage with Miss Phyllis. I went ahead and finished school, what I started, and God told me to go back to school. So I finished school. I've been a Girl Scout adult volunteer for about 15, 16 years. So I'm still actively working in my community for over 20 years. Now I write, I thank God for Mrs. Phyllis's platform because I started writing when I was 9, and I kind of thought it was boring. So I went all the way around the world. I've modeled, I've acted, I've done a lot of things just to come back and realize that writing was my passion and my gift. So, just between July and December, I was able to finish 5 books. So I'm just so excited at what God's doing. And now I'm a part of her masterclass. It's just so much. I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited to be here.
I'm excited and so very proud of all the great things that God is doing through you. And those young ladies that you've mentored although they've gone off to college, I know that there is a ripple effect of what you have taught them. And I'm sure that they are teaching others, even if they don't realize that that's what they're doing. So,
And I see a lot of them because my daughter does hair. And so I still get to, I still get to pour into them. And so I'm excited about that because when they come to get their hair done, every opportunity to speak life or plant a seed in them just to make sure their grades are up and they're doing what they're supposed to do and staying focused, is an honor and a blessing to me. So absolutely.
Well, that comes natural with you, and that is certainly your assignment, part of one of the assignments that God has given to you, and you do it ever so well. So
Thank you.
Congratulations on that. Well, what I'd like for you to do is to, before you share your life-changing message with our audience, if you were to give it a title, what would that title be and why?
Well, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. It's similar to the first story title that I used when I was on your stage. It's simple, just my story for God's glory. I think that's just the best way to sum up such a big story. Simply for his glory. Everything I've gone through is simply for his glory. So absolutely.
Yes, very good. And that has continued to be our theme for the Powerful Journey Women's Conferences, My Story for God's Glory, because we all have a story. Yes, and that story is not for us. It's for us to share it and to impact those that need to hear it, but it's also for God's glory. And so, so very true. Well, with that said, would you please share your story?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start by just kind of reminiscing when I first attended one of your conferences. And I've been in church my entire life. So I have been to so many conferences and so many events. But what stood out for me most about your conference is you poured into us. You gave us application, but then there was that move towards action. And that is one of the things that most of these events is like, you're spending all this money, you're going to conference, but what are you taking from it? And then what are you doing? And so I felt such a great conviction when I went to your conference, because at the time I had my mentor group for maybe 10 years. And I was like, I want to be attached to this, and she would be a great mentor and I could use this for my mentor group. And then I come to the class and you're like, no, you're going to be on a stage and you're going to be speaking. And even though I had the mentor group for years, it was really behind the scenes because, it was intimate and personal. I could have Bible studies with them. I could mentor them. I could, if there was a special situation, I could deal with them. So I wasn't really in the limelight at that time. So it was a transition for me to say, okay, you're going to come back from behind this paper and you're actually going to stand on the stage. And then even more in depth than that, I remember being in that first class. And I remember what you said. You said, God showed me a wall around your heart. And so it was just amazing to me because as I began to talk about my story, I went through so much at such a young age. And I learned that our hearts are smart. So as a young child, I learned how to cope. And in turn, there was a wall that formed around my heart. And so all those years I had been going through life and I was thinking I was fine. I really didn't discuss what I had gone through. I had literally had friends for about 20 years that I went to high school with. And I ran away and came from Oklahoma in the 8th grade and I came to Texas. And no one asked, like, where did this girl come from? You went with us in elementary school. You just appeared. And so here I am in 2016. I graduated high school in 1997. And people are just like, I didn't even know you had that many siblings, so I really kept my story, so I never used it as an excuse. I came to Texas at the age of 13, 14 years old. I was a ward of the state, but everything I had gone through before that is what really my story. So in the process of joining Mrs. Phyllis's organization, it was a conviction that God told me that I was not really helping those girls if I wasn't coming from a healed place. And so because I wasn't healed and there were some areas in my life that I need to be healed from, this was, the best opportunity that could have happened to me because it ignited a healing process in my life. So my story, my glory, my mom went to prison for murder when I was 9 years old. And so I stand on stages all the time and talk about a lot of the things that I experienced. But since the standing on your stage, I recall God telling me maybe 2 years ago, he said, I want you to research your statistical data. And that's when I learned I am a poly, they call it a poly victim. And that means a person, and often a child, that has experienced multiple streams or forms of abuse. And so, I mean, I think it was about 8 pages of statistics, what they had to say about me. So it was, I mean, I had stood on stages for a while, but to see all of the horrible things they had to say about people, children like me, who had experienced multiple forms of abuse. And I stand on stages and I talk about the severe abuse and, you know, being taken out of the schools. And I can remember standing in class as a young girl and pictures being taken of me of just, you know, right before the police come and they take you. And I remember waiting at those group homes, waiting for the foster family to take me. And, you know, it was something that I was not even good enough for the foster families to take me. So I suffered a lot of abuse. And a lot of times we don't understand, when the parents do the crime, the kids do the time as well. So you got children who have been severely abused, multiple forms of that abuse, from sexual, just all of the things. I just remember one incident when I was locked in the closet and I got to get out, and I went to this carnival and I entered a pie eating contest and I won. And for years I was so ashamed to talk about it, because people use that in my family and my friends to talk about, you know, when I won, my face ended up on the Feed the Hungry Network billboards in Oklahoma. So as people were driving down the streets, it was my image, you know, this little girl with, you know, blotches of hair missing, eating this pie. And so it just added to a lot of the turmoil that I had experienced. But until I came and joined Mrs. Phyllis's organization, I thought I was okay. But God really, through her process, showed me that he really wanted to heal the little girl that had died inside of me. And so anything that you could think of bad, I don't remember a good day before the age of 9, I experienced it. And so I'm just thankful now to be at a place where I can speak. I can help these young girls, because anything they probably have experienced, molestation, rape, early on, I was diagnosed with cancer because of the abuse. And so you can imagine a young girl like me, I felt cursed majority of my life. Of course, there was the multiple suicide attempts because of everything that I was going through. And so every time you felt like you moved forward, here it is, your past coming back to remind you of your past. And so I remember that diagnosis, but what I remember about is that I never accepted it. I just kept praying to God that he would allow me that opportunity to be a mother. That was just the main focus. It was just like, you know, so I didn't understand the chemo, and that I just understood, like, I'm not going to be a mother. And I just remember rolling into Parkland that day and then being rolled back out. And they said they didn't know what happened. And so now, as Ms. Phyllis explained, I have 2 beautiful daughters, and I don't take that for granted. So I'm just, you know, now I'm just thankful to be speaking and helping young girls from a healed place, because now that I'm healed, I can be authentic. I can be bold. I can be transparent. I can love you, but I can also give you the raw, authentic truth, because I have come from a healed place. And so now, I mean, I can talk to these girls about anything. And I'm just thankful to have these relationships, the relationship I have with my daughters, where they come to me and talk with me and they tell me they love me because I didn't experience that. So everything I'm really experiencing as a mother with my children is something I never got. And I mean, I do not take that lightly at all. It's an honor and a blessing to be a mother. And I'm just thankful that I don't look like what I went through.
That's what I was about to say. You know, there is either a song or
Yeah.
a phrase that people, okay, that you don't look like what you've been through. But you said something that stuck with me just now. You said to parents, they do the crime, but the children do the time. If you were to speak to a young lady right now who is doing the time because parents have committed a crime or have done the crime, especially now, Tiffany, in the middle of a pandemic, there's so many young women that are hurting. What would you say to her just right now, just from what you've experienced?
Well, I mean, I always tell the girls, if I can, you can. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I am the just a walking billboard of just everything that can go wrong and that could be wrong. And when I look at statistics and they say I'm not supposed to be in my right mind, and statistically I'm supposed to abuse my children, and statistically I was supposed to end up in prison. I just look at that and I just say, I mean, when I think about what happened to us, and then my aunt Tiki and her 11 kids, and she was only 25 years old. So she had 11 kids because my mom had 7 and she had 4. And I just think, I'm so grateful for everything that I've gone through. So for those that are experiencing that, I just want you to remain hopeful, because I am living proof that if you stick with God, I'm not just saying just stick it out there with someone else, but if you stick it out with God and you truly surrender your life to God, He can turn it around. He can give you a new perspective. I mean, because I remember always thinking I was cursed and life was always bad. And every time I tried to move forward, and God had to give me a new perspective, because He had to say everything that could have happened, it didn't. You didn't lose your mind. Yes, you were left alone, but this didn't happen. So sometimes you have to look at, even in the midst of the bad, just like we just had a week last week that was crazy. You got to be able to look at the good from it. You know what I mean?
Yes. And for those of you that are listening to this, and perhaps you're in another country or another state and don't know exactly what Tiffany is talking about, those of us who are in Texas and even Louisiana experienced a week of very cold temperatures for our area, and electricity power turned off. The grids couldn't handle it. Water turned off, because frozen, and pipes bursting. Just so much happened last week. And so, yes, Tiffany, we are so very grateful to God for bringing us through that last week. Absolutely. And you've mentioned God over and over again, and you talked about your childhood. Who introduced you to God?
Well, I'm going to say, I always say, I tell my mom, I thank God that she always sent the church. Like when the church bus came, she didn't go to church, but she made sure we were on the church bus. And so, that was one of the things when I couldn't sleep at night, because I don't remember sleeping well at night. And I remember my aunt telling me that I used to beat my head and rock my leg at the same time. So it was just this constant, I guess, being used to being beaten, and then you're trying to rock yourself. So I used to beat myself and rock myself at the same time. And that's how it would go to sleep, So I realized that it was always something, when I went to the church, it was something that was comforting when I was at church. And so for me, it has just been, I don't care, when I was in the Army, when I went off to college, I tried to make sure that I was connected to God and just near to Him. And I'm not saying that I always lived right and I always made the right decisions, but until like the last 6 years when I completely surrendered my life to God. And that's because I realized that trying to do things my way, when God had a calling on my life, He had chose me for such a time as this. I just sent a message to Miss Phyllis about who I remind myself of in the Bible. And God has showed me Joseph, because so much happened to him when he was young. But just like my story in my first book says, it was all preparation. Sometimes you don't understand what God is taking you through. You don't understand why He chose you. I remember I was 21 years old and I asked God, why so much suffering, so much pain at such a young age? And I remember the Spirit telling me, because people are still being crucified so other people can be saved. So sometimes it's simply not about you. You know what I mean? So I just always found comfort in my stepdad told me, he said, God wanted me to let you know that because you didn't have a mother and father, He was your mother and father. Mm-hmm. And so when I could sleep at night, I knew it was God, and just, when I just look at now, because even amongst my siblings, some of them are on medication. Some of them have fell into those statistics where they say a mental illness, and I just look at God and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what I'm saying? It could have very well been me. So I tell my husband the other day, I was like, okay, even when I lose my phone, I'm like, okay, Lord, keep my mind. Keep my mind. Like, you just misplaced your phone. But I'm like, Lord, keep my mind. And so me and God is just, how we say His favorite. I feel like I'm His favorite. And I can say that because it has not always been good. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's when you're the favorite, when it hasn't always been good, and you can still say, I'm sticking with God. I'm His favorite. Yes.
That's good. What an amazing story. Now, you've mentioned your book, and actually you're the author of several books. Let's talk about briefly, just share with our listeners the books that you've written and give an overview of each of those books, please.
Okay, so this is my first one, and this is the book that I stood on the stage. I love this book because it was the first step, in the process of where I am today. And so that healing is so necessary. And as I noted earlier, I did go back to school and I got my double master's, and one of my masters is in healthcare administration and management. And so now I understand the full capacity of healing from the spiritual side to the physical side. You know what I mean? Because there are so many things that you don't understand when when you don't process your emotions or how you're feeling, whether it's anger, grief, forgiveness, whatever you're harboring, you don't understand how it impacts your body. And so I thank God because I was the first in my family to speak openly about things that we had endured and gone through in our childhood. And when I spoke about it, I didn't get the claps and the hoorahs, but I eventually did. And I'm thankful that I did what I needed to do to get my healing. And I will tell you that sometimes your healing you won't get an apology. Sometimes you're going to have to forgive with no apology, and that's a part of the healing process. Because forgiveness it comes from it's for you. It's selfish. It means I'm going to forgive you so that I can release you from me. So
Exactly.
I'm thankful for this. So I discussed some hard things, and this book was not to bring shame to anyone, because I bring glory to God for the mother that I see, that I love now and I have a relationship with. I can tell you, before I wrote this book, I did not have a relationship with my mom like I do now. I literally would have to tell myself, send reminders to say, call your mom. And when I tell you, as a result of this book, when she first read it, she wasn't happy about it. I literally talk to my mom almost every day now.
Praise
So
God.
what I just, I feel like us as African Americans and all of, we have to become more comfortable talking about uncomfortable topics, because we need to get our healing. Is so necessary. So that was the first book.
It is necessary. Now, Tiffany, for those who are riding in their cars and they're listening, what's the title of the first book?
The first title is My Story, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Preparation for My Destiny. You have got to understand that when God is in it, he can make it all work for your good and his glory. So this what this book is about, is realizing that it was all working for my good and I had no idea. So I'm thankful for that. My second book is Every Freckle on My Face. Now, this book, it's not specifically about whether or not you have freckles, but that was my thing. My mom, we have a lot of Caucasian and Indian in our family. And, it's like, I was abused the most. I was the most neglected. Now I got the red hair and the freckles. I know my daughters have freckles, and I know as an African American having freckles, it was just even all races that I know that have freckles. I talk to kids all the time and they tell me they don't like them. And so we're living in a time where they're telling kids that, every time you look at something, it has to be bigger. It's not enough. Your body parts, your hair, they're trying to. And this book is simply to let the kids know, anyone who reads this, from every freckle on your face is where it's supposed to be. Every hair on your head is where it's supposed to be. If you have red hair and your cousin has, your sister has straight hair, that's the way God intended. And our children need to know they are exactly who God created them to be. They don't need to try to go change anything. They don't need to fix their nose. They don't need to fix. They're exactly who God created them to be. So this is what this book just teaches you to embrace, whatever it is. If it's freckles, if it's red hair, if it's a mole, it's exactly where God intended to be. So don't try to change anything. So I love going to schools and talking to the kids about it, because they really get it. They get it. Like, because most people say, well, I don't have freckles. I said, but that's not what the book is about. And I love being very creative. So I gave like a poem in the book, and then I gave a short story. And then there were viewers who submitted pictures. I even had a person who submitted a dog with freckles. And so I like to write and give people extra, in everything that I write. Yeah. I have if you go on my website, I was a part of a collaboration. I don't have that book right in front of me, but it was a book called A Rose is Still a Rose. And it was just testimonial stories of women talking about, the fact that it's just like they say that thing with the dollar bill, $100 bill, you can crumble it up, you can throw it on the ground, but it's still $100 bill. So it doesn't lose its value. So it's the same thing with a rose. We get rained on, our petals change, but at the end of the day, still a rose. So I love being a part of that project. And then this project, I'm not saying she was a gold digger, was a book that God gave me a title. I wrote this book in like 24 hours.
Wow.
And it's amazing because I don't know about you, Miss Phyllis, but sometimes God gives you a title and then the story. And if you like me, you have a life full of stories.
Yes.
He just has to give you titles for them. So this story was already inside of me, but it was so amazing. The title is not the way it appears, but the message is simple. The devil knows our weaknesses. He knows your weaknesses. And I often talk about, it's just like if you've been sober for 20 or 30 years, and then here comes a tragedy. You're in an accident and you lose a loved one. And isn't it amazing how here comes that alcohol or that buddy that wants you, and you're thinking, I've been sober for 20 years. But we just have to keep in mind, just like I was saying, that being a Christian and being saved is a choice. We have to make the choice every day that we're going to get up, we're going to serve God. And one thing for me, I have to let people know this is not easy. I have gone through some things, and I have affirmations on my window, on my mirror. When my husband came, he was just like, what is this on your mirror? I said, you don't understand. We have days, I have days where the enemy tries to creep in. He tries to remind me of my past, and I have to remind him of his future. So this is something every single day that, we're reminding ourselves that we're beautiful, we're smart, we're important, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Because it's not easy. Because I do have days. So really, with this story, it's a good read. It's just reminding you to stick with God and to be aware of the distractions and the different things that the enemy uses. For me in the book, one of my weaknesses is that I attracted men with money. I wasn't a gold digger, but every time I went somewhere, I had these crazy stories where people were always trying to present themselves with money to me. And then finally it came a time where God was saying that if you're relying on them, then you're not completely trusting me. Mm-hmm. So I had a encounter where after I wrote the book, you think, oh, I'm running with God and everything is fine. That's not it. I stood on a stage, I spoke, and I wrote the book, and it was like life happened again. My landlord sold my property right from underneath me. Me and my children were homeless. They're in school. I'm in grad school. Then I get a medication error. I'm at the doctor and they tell me they sent the wrong medicine. So I'm in the hospital, and then my car started working all at the same time. And of course, who calls me? My millionaire friend. And God's like, are you going to trust me? Are you going to trust him? And so that was at the point that I realized that I could no longer accept money and gifts and trips. I had to truly trust God. And when I tell you, he is better and bigger than any sugar mama, sugar daddy, any gift, any trip, because sometimes those dates, we watch enough on the ID channel. Sometimes these dates, that gift, that trip is not worth it. And there are people that are losing their lives because they really didn't like him, and they wanted the trip and they wanted the gift. So the message is just, the devil knows your weakness. Stick with God, choose God. He's just amazing. And when I decided to trust him completely, he opened doors. When I tell you, he will use people that you don't even know to be a blessing to you. That's why it's just best to stick with God. That's all I can say. It's so
well, that is a great message. That is certainly a great message to stick with God, to put God first, to trust God, and to be obedient to what he is calling you to do. So
that's it.
What an amazing story, and for an amazing young woman you are, Tiffany. And I just would like for you to share with our audience how they can stay connected to you, how they can get your books, and how they can follow you.
Absolutely. I do. I don't have these books, but they are going to be available March 1st. You can go on my website. I'm working on a very big project. And as you can, well, a big project. And so we got Dear Light Skin, Dark Skin. It's an adult book. And then it's also a children's book. And so what we are trying to do is overcome some of the race issues within our race. So the Dear Light Skin, Dark Skin is a colorism issue. And if you've learned anything about me in this, I am just big on healing. I'm big on doing things that can help people. And I truly believe that one of my favorite prayers is a serenity prayer. And it's just simple things you can change or you can control. Those are the things that you should change and control. And I really believe for African Americans, we cannot change another race, but we can begin within ourselves and within our race. So I'm truly excited about this project. Everything from the books. I help college students with essay writing for college, for scholarships. I have several different curriculums for my mentor program that I've had for years. I have a curriculum for going to college for free, which teaches young people and their parents on how they can go to college for free. All of this information can be found on my website, www.oneofakindta.com. You can click on information, bio, books. And if you want to contact me, there's a contact me page. You can just fill out that information. I do ghostwriting. I do freelance writing. Any way that I can be of service to you, your daughters, your children, anybody, I'm willing to help. I've done it for years. And I just look forward to assisting and continue to assist anyone that I can.
So great. So much greatness going on here. And we will have all of her information in the show notes so that you can stay connected and follow all the great things that Tiffany is doing. So Tiffany, as we are closing our interview today, you've stood on stage and you've shared your amazing story, and you had just an audience of women, a sea of women as far as you could see. And they stood on their feet. They gave you the biggest applause, but now they've left to return to their vehicles. You're still standing on stage and the curtains close. You now turn to walk away to go to your vehicle. What 3 main points do you hope that every woman walked away with?
Oh, just 3. No, but seriously, I would say to die empty, to die free, and not to allow what you go through to make you bitter, but to grow through it and become better. Die empty. We know Dr. Myers Monroe just encouraged. I mean, Miss Phyllis talks about this all the time about the graveyard and cemetery being the richest place on earth, because we're so full of gifts and ideas and vision and talents. And then we're dying and taking them to our grave. But I think it's important to die free. Maya Angelou tells us she knows why the cage bird sings. And so in order to be free, you have to be healed. In order to be healed, you need to be able to forgive and let go and do whatever you need to do to get your healing, whether it's write it out, write a book, go to the person or the family member or loved one that's, whatever it is, just get your healing so that you can die free. I think that's one of the things God wanted to show us when he went to the cross. I recently wrote a book called Church Hurts, and he made me go back and add an entire chapter. And he just reminded us the reason he rose with all power, because he died with it first. He died before he hung his head and died. He said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So forgiveness, obedience, love, God is love, is so powerful. And then after you've gone through it, I've gone through a lot of stuff, but I just thank God that I can smile. It didn't allow me to remain bitter. I hear people all the time that I learned my lesson and I'm not going, and then they're just bitter. It's like, so whatever you go through, just remember God allowed it. Then it's ultimately working out for your good and his glory, and allow it to be better so that you go into the next situation. Don't take that old baggage into your next relationship and your next friendship and your next opportunity. Grow from it and become better. So those are the three things: die empty, die free, and grow better, not bitter.
Wonderful. Love that. Love that. And you've heard it today from Tiffany Weaver, one of a kind, and just an amazing young woman. I want to say to you that if you haven't registered yet for our Powerful Journey Women's Conference, it is approaching really fast. It's April 16th and 17th. And you can go to my website to register. It's phyllisjenkins.com, PhyllisJenkins.com. Register either to be in person or watch us virtually. And you will definitely be in for a treat that will impact your life for many, many years to come. Tiffany said she's proof. She's going to be a part of the conference as well. And we are so excited and looking forward to it. And Tiffany, thank you again for coming on. And we just look forward to following you and seeing all the great opportunities that God is going to continue to open up for you. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank
you are welcome. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in being on the show, go to phyllisjenkins.com. You can also sign up for the Powerful Journey Masterclass or the Speakers Academy at phyllisjenkins.com.